Hello, this is Mark from My Keys to Music, and in this video we're going to take a look at something that may have you perplexed. I know it should have you perplexed if you are a person currently in the market for a Nord keyboard, and you're brand new to Nord and you know not much about it. Stay tuned, you'll learn a lot about Nord going through this video. More importantly than that, if you already know you want to purchase a Nord, but now you're stuck on that final question, which is, do you purchase a Nord Electro 6 or do you purchase the Nord Stage 3? And you've seen all the videos, you've looked around on the internet, and you have a good idea of what each one can do by themselves, but I don't believe too many people are comparing one side by side to really help you with that decision of which one do you pull the trigger on. And if you are that type of person, then this video is made for you. And I'm excited about that because one of the reasons I started this channel in the first place was because when I was debating between an Electro or any kind of Nord keyboard, and I was looking at the Stage 3 and I was looking at the Electro, and I ended up buying the Electro because it was affordable or more affordable, and it was a great place to start, and I already had an Electro 3, so I purchased an Electro 5D. For about a year and a half, I had that, and then all of a sudden I said, geez, I want the next thing, and I want that synth. Then it was time to upgrade to the Nord Stage 3, and I ended up having both. So I did a fairly popular video where I compared the two, and that was the Electro 5 and the Stage 3. So in this video, we're going to actually go a step further and compare the Nord Electro 6 with the Stage 3. And I'm particularly excited about this. Why? Because these two keyboards are very, very close in a lot of ways. In fact, the Electro 6, when it came out, I almost thought to myself, wow, this is going to be a tough decision between going with the Stage 3 and the Electro, because the Electro 6 has really improved the feature set quite a bit, and it's really reaching at that Stage 3 capability in so many ways. So join me now, and we will take a look at these two keyboards side by side. We're going to do this very methodically, very technical. Put on your white coat and your glasses, because this is going to be more scientific than it is necessarily fun, but it's going to be great if you're a consumer who really likes all the details. So this could be a very important decision for you, and that's why this video is here to help. Okay, with that said, if this is your first time on this channel and you're seeing this and me for the first time, feel free to subscribe. I try to do videos once or twice a month. I try to even do weekly, but it doesn't always work out that way. But currently, I'm definitely doing at least once a month, and many times more than once a month. All right, so let's get started. You can see here I have the Nord Electro 6 comparison chart alongside the comparison chart of the Stage 3. On the Electro 6, you have three choices. So you have the 73-key Hammer Action Portable, and actually at the same size, you have 73-key semi-weighted Waterfall, and then a smaller keyboard, the 61-key semi-weighted Waterfall. On the Stage side, you actually have an 88-key, a 76-key, and a 73-key. Now, if you already know that you want 88 keys and you're not going to live with anything less, then look no further. The Stage 3 is your keyboard, because that's the only keyboard that comes with 88 keys. With that, though, you will be paying a small price. It's significantly heavier. It's quite a bit bigger. So if you have a small studio, think twice about getting 88 keys in there. And remember that no matter what Nord keyboard you purchase, even though you have less than 88 keys, it's just a click of a button with the octave shift up and down to expand your keyboard left or right, so that in many ways you're getting more than 88 keys in some cases, simply because you can play with that octave up and down button. But again, if you want all the full glory of 88 keys, definitely go with the Stage 3. Okay, so that's it for that. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the display. Now, on the Electro 6 here, they're making kind of a big deal of a 128 by 64 OLED display, and it's great. Compared to older Nord keyboards, without a display, the OLED display does provide a significant amount of information. It is nice to look at, it's clean, it's modern, etc. The Stage 3 has two of those, one for the synth engine dedicated and one for the program area, which is more of like where you do most of the programming, most of your setting changes. And so really, if you're into OLED displays, you're going to get two with the Stage 3. You're only going to get one with the Electro. Outputs, you have two major outputs, one stereo or two mono. That is pretty standard for most keyboards. On the Stage 3, you actually have four outputs, and they are configurable. So you could send let's say, your piano in channel 1 and 2 and your organ in channel 3 and 4. Or you can send your piano in 1 and 2 and your synth in channel 3 and nothing in channel 4. And there's just a wide variety of combinations you can do for output settings on your stage 3. So if you are the type of person who is playing on a sophisticated gig where you want to run your outputs to different sound modules or different mixing channels so they can mix them differently at that level during the gig, then you probably want to look at a stage 3. Or if you are doing some serious recording or you have a very sophisticated setup where you just need the multiple output option, stage 3 is the only way you're going to get that. For most people, I would say the outputs are not the deal breaker and not the thing that pushes them over the edge one way or the other. They both have control pedal inputs. I'm starting with the left here and using that as my guidepost. And monitor input. They both have a monitor input. You can put your iPhone or your mobile device or any device that can play music, let's say, and can be used as an input, and you can have nice sound playing along with your keyboard. So it's very nice to have that monitor input, and they both have that feature. Then drawbars. So you see here on the left, you could either have the LED digital drawbars or the physical drawbars. Both the Stage and the Electro have an optional drawbars, and the drawbars are dictated by the keyboard size. So be careful. If you're looking for digital drawbars, you can only get that in a certain keyboard size, and you can look that up specifically on the Nord website if you want to go down to that level. But for some people, the digital drawbars are cooler looking. I personally think they look better, a little bit more modern. But then again, if you're a traditionalist and you love the whole organ look and feel and just the whole idea of manual drawbars, because organ is one of the main reasons you're getting this Nord, then want to focus on a keyboard that has that. But the good news is either one you choose has the option of digital versus manual, and it's just a matter of the keyboard size, which will get you there. In other words, you can't just pick your keyboard size and then dictate somehow that you want the digital drawbars. No. You will get the drawbars if you buy the right size keyboard. It's not the other way around. Okay, so now for seamless transitions on the Nord Electro 6, that is a new feature, and when that came out, I thought to myself, wow, that was a pretty advanced feature that the Stage 3 offered. Now the Electro 6 has it, so they both have seamless transitions. It's a great feature in either case, and what that is when you are playing a sound, and let's say you've got the sustain pedal, and now you change the sound midstream, let's say from a piano, and you've got the sustain pedal, and it's all beautiful, and you've taken your hands off the keyboard, but the sustain pedal is still holding the keys down. You click another sound, let's say you want to go to an organ, you won't hear the organ until you play the keys. In other words, your piano will sustain through that, even though you've changed the sound, and that's what a seamless transition is. There's maybe a couple other better examples of that, and I apologize, I'm not going to show you this live, but this is the white coat glasses review of these two things. If you want to see a lot of this, how this stuff works, I have other videos on the channel that you can check out. And we go deep on some of this stuff and we learn about it, and I do training and all that. Okay, 6 split points for the Electro. There's actually 10 on the Stage 3. There's actually 10 split locations. Those are 10 lights, which ends up being 11 zones if you think about 10 lights, because there's always one zone on either side. So it's 10 split points. Crossfade between split points, yes, you get that on the Electro 6. And you also get crossfade on the Stage 3. So rest assured that advanced feature is there as well. Then you have programs, 8 banks of 50 programs and a page view. I believe you get all of that with the Stage 3. You still get the same amount of banks and storage locations. Not to be confused with memory. The memory is different on those, and we'll go through that in a second. But the number of storage locations are the same, at least for programs. Then you have the live auto-save programs, 4 locations for live settings. With the Stage 3, you get 5 locations for live settings. That subtle difference is probably not going to make or break you. Whether you have 1 location, 5 versus 4, it's hardly a difference in my mind. So I wouldn't use that as a huge decision point there. Let's see what else we have. We have MIDI over USB. Yes, they both have MIDI over USB. Sound Manager 6.0 with extended features. They both can work with Sound Manager 6.0, and they both have near identical features within the Sound Manager options, which is an application that runs on your Windows or Macintosh computer. The Sound Manager allows you to download files or sounds from the Nord website and insert them into your keyboard. You can also rename sounds, recategorize sounds in some cases, right on your keyboard, all using the software. So you don't have to do all your programming within your Nord. You can do some of the programming like renaming, reorganizing, things like that right on the Sound Manager. Okay, then now we're in the organ section. There's organ polyphony full. In other words, you don't have to worry about polyphony when it comes to the organ. And this is the case for both Stage 3 and the Electro. They're the same there. Organ models, the C2D B3 simulation, those models are the same between the Stage 3 and the Electro. They both have the Farfisa, the Vox, the pipe organ 1 and 2, so they're the same there. The one difference here on the organ models with the Electro is that you have the B3 plus bass option. That option is not available on the Stage 3, and perhaps that's one of the few things that the Electro has that the Stage doesn't. And that is just essentially where if you split the Electro into two parts, your left hand will be playing like a B3 bass configuration, and the right hand can play a traditional B3. And there's a subtle difference there, and it actually is a very effective combination.
The Electro also has a brand new dual organ feature, which allows you to split your organ into two parts, and you can control the drawbars independently. And although the Stage 3 doesn't have something specifically called dual organ, you may be able to imitate something similar by using panel A and B in combination.
All right, what else do we have here? We have the Rotary Speaker simulation, the C2D 122 Rotary Speaker simulation. That 122 speaker refers to a model number, and that's the Leslie speaker from the Leslie Speaker Company. You know, traditionally they were the combo to be reckoned with when you had an organ like a B3 organ and that Leslie speaker. That's a lethal combination. And I do have a video on the Rotary Speaker, which you ought to check out. Okay, so the next thing you want to look at is the half moon switch. That's available if you have the manual drawbars. They both have the half moon switch option. Next up is the Nord Piano Library memory. You get 1 gigabyte of memory for the piano library on the Electro, and on the Stage you get 2 gigs, so that's twice as much. And that doesn't necessarily mean a huge compromise. It just means that you'll be able to put less extra large and large pianos on your Electro. Okay, now let's talk about the sample library. 512 megabytes of samples that you can hold. 480 megabytes, so there's actually more sample memory in the Electro 6, another small feature that has it over the Stage 3. Sample polyphony, 30 voices. Here we have 34 voices, so just slightly more voicings for the sample polyphony on the Stage 3. Now the weight is going to be a difference here. You're going to see a little bit more components and weight for the Stage 3 in general. So 61 keys doesn't exist on the Stage 3. There is no 61 key keyboard, so let's start with the 73 key and compare that with the 73 key. So that would be the Electro 6D 73. It weighs 20.28 pounds or 9.2 kilograms. Over here, Stage 3, so that's going to be 22 pounds. So 22 pounds versus 20.28 pounds for the 73 key keyboard. And then the Electro 6 HP, which is 73 with the hammer action. There is no 73 hammer action on the Stage 3, so let's just do the 76 by comparison. That is 27 pounds on the Stage 3 versus 25 pounds. So across the board, the Stage 3 is heavier pound for pound, or key for key, I should say, but not by much, 1 or 2 pounds in either case. Of course, the Stage 3, the big boy, the 88 key, is 41 pounds, quite a bit heavier than any of the other keyboards. Okay, so, and then you can compare the width and the depth here, just looking at my screen. In general, the width and depth and height is a little bit longer or wider or deeper on the Stage 3 in general. There's more components.
Another interesting feature that's only available on the Stage 3 is something called an Extern section, and this allows you to control an external MIDI instrument by integrating this panel right on the Stage 3. You can split the external instrument using the KB zone button at the top. This works much the same way that the split options work on the Stage 3 itself. Then you can choose an octave up or octave down. It's very handy to have that right at your fingertips. And down below that, you have the value knob, which allows you to immediately determine the volume of that external device, or you can change the program settings or any control setting, like a MIDI control parameter that can be assigned. And finally, you can choose whether your sustain pedal or the pitch stick on the Nord 3 will control that external device. So having this really right at your fingertips feature on the Stage 3 is something that really makes the Stage 3 a quote-unquote better keyboard for controlling external keyboards. Not that you can't control external keyboards from your Electro, certainly you can, but having this extra Extern section brings that up a notch in terms of having that power at your fingertips. I debated using the effects as a comparison method between the two keyboards. They are very similar. They are both feature-rich, readily available at your fingertips, and highly effective. With that said, let's talk about some of the similarities and some of the differences between the Electro 6 and the Stage 3 effects. Keep in mind that they are so good on both keyboards that I don't think I would use the effects as a decision-making point whatsoever. I don't see any deal breakers here at all. With that said, let's take a look. The EQ on both have bass and treble options with a sweepable mid-range. In general, the effects can be applied to one sound engine at a time. That holds true for both the Stage 3 and the Electro 6. The exception of that is that reverb on both keyboards influence all three sound engines at once. On the Stage 3, the compressor also affects all sound engines at once, whereas on the Electro 6, your compressor option is going to be limited to one part at a time. Effect 1 on the Electro offers Tremolo 1, Tremolo 2, Pan 1 and 2, 1 wah, and 1 ring modulation, whereas on the Stage 3, you have 1 pan, 1 tremolo, a ring modulation, and 3 wahs. On the Stage 3, you have the amount knob as well as a rate knob, and that rate knob is syncable with the master clock. So there is a slight advantage on the Stage 3 Effect 1, but not enough for me to say, wow, I have to have the Stage 3 because I get a rate knob. Effect 2 are very similar between the two. They both have a phase 1 and 2. They have 1 flange, 2 chorus, and 1 vibe. The Stage 3 has an effect knob that goes 0 through 10 and a rate knob as well. The Electro 6 has a deep option, so any of those options can be deep, but it's one setting. It's either deep or not deep. The speaker compressor on the Electro is offering the twin JC and small amp simulation. That's also offered on the Stage 3, but on the Stage 3, those amp simulations are in their own independent area in the EQ, so the way that they are applied is slightly different. The Rotary Speaker option and emulation is embedded here on this speaker compressor effect on the Electro 6, whereas on the Stage 3, the Rotary Speaker option is independent of that area, providing a slight advantage, I believe. Now let's talk about delay. They both have a feature-rich delay with an optional dry to wet knob, 0 through 10. Then you have the tap tempo set option, which is the same between the two. The feedback on the Electro 6 offers 3 settings, 1, 2, and 3, whereas on the Stage 3 you get a 0 through 10 feedback, so there is more fidelity. And then on the Stage 3 you have the high pass, low pass, and band pass filter along with analog mode, so the Stage 3 has a slight advantage of delay options there. Then on the reverb options for the Electro, you have 3 room sizes, that would be hall, stage, and room, all with an optional bright. So you have 3 room sizes with bright option. On the Stage 3, you have 6 room sizes. You have 2 rooms, 2 stages, 2 halls, and a bright option for any of those.
Okay, so that's the scientific comparison of some of the main features, but we're forgetting some of the huge deal breakers.
And the first deal breaker is the fact that the Stage 3 comes with a full-featured synthesizer. Yes, modeled after the Nord A1 synthesizer. Not as many oscillators and choices as the A1, but a close comparison in terms of the basic feature set, and the spirit of the engine itself is largely based on the A1. So look what you get with the Stage 3. You get a ton of options, 2 independent oscillators per panel, and you get 2 panels, so that's 4 oscillators working together to create a rich fabric of sound and literally limitless choices in terms of what you can do as a musician or a sound designer. The Stage 3 literally has a full-blown synthesizer built in. Now the Electro does have the ability to play samples, and you do have control over the basic envelope and a few other features here, but it's really a night and day comparison with the power of the Stage 3 synth versus the standard sampler player with a few features on the Electro.
And then the other huge deal breakers that are never mentioned but important is the pitch stick and the modulation wheel. Both available on the Stage 3, non-existent on the Electro. So if you are interested in having a pitch stick and it's a real important thing to you, get the Stage 3. If budget is a consideration, start with the Stage 3 compact and work your way up in terms of that. But that could be a deal breaker for most people. The other big deal breaker, and not often talked about, but so important, is the Electro has the ability to play 3 simultaneous sounds, one from the organ section, one from the piano section, and one from the synth section. All 3 of those can play simultaneously, and you think that's quite powerful, and it is quite powerful. The Stage keyboard has this notion of panels, and it has a panel A and a panel B. Think of panel A as one Stage 3 keyboard, and panel B is like having another Stage 3 keyboard playing either simultaneously or in a split configuration at the same time. Huge, huge, huge. In other words, you could have 6 independent parts playing on the Stage 3 simultaneously, or layered or split in any other combination. So the Stage 3 just has this abundant flexibility quotient added to it, simply because you've got your panel A, which is one keyboard with 3 sounds or 3 sound engines, and then you've got your panel B on top of that, and that is a lethal combination of power. So if I were to sum up the 3 big deal breakers between a Stage and an Electro and why I choose one over the other, the 3 biggies are the pitch bend mod wheel combo. That could be a deal breaker. The second one is that notion of panel A and B, so you have all that flexibility, all that power, all that polyphony happening at the same time. And then the third one is the absence of a true blue A1 synth at your fingertips if you get the Electro, or the inclusion of that A1 synth if you've gotten the Stage 3. So this is a preliminary video that talks about the basic differences between the Stage 3 and the Nord Electro 6. If you want to learn about each of these details, check out my comparison between the Nord Electro 5 and the Stage 3. There I show you live examples of me taking you through most of these features one by one, so you get to get familiar with it. If you're already familiar with what these things do and just needed a comparison, then this video probably already solved that problem for you. So really appreciate you watching. Thanks for sticking with me on this video, and we will catch you on the next one. Feel free to leave a comment, share with your friends, and all that good stuff too. Thanks.